This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, Special Prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have a really great show for you today. There are things that have happened since our last show of last week, and I want to talk about that first. It's dealing with the case that we filed that's Dennis Montgomery and Larry Klayman versus James Comey, the National Security Agency, the Central Intelligence Agency, and all kinds of other intelligence agencies, or should we say lack of intelligence thereof. I appeared in court last Friday with Judge Richard Leon. He, of course, is the judge that presided over the first two cases that I brought a few years ago when Edward Snowden revealed that the United States, to use the term loosely, because these people, in my view, don't represent the United States. They don't represent we the people. They represent their own sinister self. They're manipulative, they're coercive, they're blackmailing self. These are our intelligence agencies today. We've seen what they've done to President Trump and others around him, trying to destroy him. It's the deep state. It's still the Obama people that are in there for the most part, and others. But I appeared in front of Richard Leon, and I reminded him that he had entered two preliminary injunctions over the last few years against Obama, the National Security Agency, and the rest, that he had a special responsibility, that, you know, he's a great judge. I try to tell him that because he needs the encouragement, frankly, on that court. He's one of the few judges who has the guts to do anything over there, or the desire, I might add, because when you bring a case that involves the Democrats, the Democrat-appointed judges of Clinton and Obama basically slow roll or deep six the cases. That's just the way it is. But Leon is a breath of fresh air. He's a light. And I told him that we needed to move this case forward. Now, he asked me at the outset, he said, Mr. Klayman, is this a case that's related to the prior cases that you brought? Because that's how it was able to be assigned to him. Otherwise, it goes into this wheel of fortune, and it's most likely that it comes out with one of these very leftist judges who are not going to move the case along because, of course, what we're talking about is the Obama deep state here. And I explained to him that Montgomery actually was a material witness in those first two cases, but he never testified. But I had actually brought him forward to Judge Leon, and I suggested that since Leon has a security clearance, a top secret security clearance, most judges do, that he could actually interview Dennis Montgomery in camera. That means in his chambers. Now, who is Dennis Montgomery again? We've talked about him quite a bit. Dennis Montgomery is a former NSA, CIA contractor. He left the agencies with 47 hard drives, over 600 million, if you can believe that, pages of information, much of it classified. I've never seen it. I got immunity for him by going through a federal judge, the other really great federal judge in that courthouse, Royce C. Lambert, who I had during the Clinton years on many cases. I don't have any cases with him now, so I can talk to him. And anyway, he facilitated our going to James Comey of the FBI. Before that, we tried to go to Charles Grassley, the head of the Judiciary Committee, but Grassley and his staff were inert. I mean, frankly, that's a whole other story we'll get into later. But Grassley, frankly, I think is over the hill. It's time for him to go. He makes a lot of noise, but he does very little. So we went to James Comey, and Judge Lambert basically hooked me up with his general counsel, James Baker, and I got immunity through the U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia for Montgomery to come forward with this information. And, of course, what does this information show? We've talked about that, too. In fact, Montgomery was on our very first show, and I've talked about it since, is that it shows that mass surveillance of the American people, but it also shows that prominent individuals like President Trump, his staff, people around him before he became president, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, other justices such as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, judges, even Lamberth himself was surveilled, and prominent individuals. I don't know that I'm a prominent individual. I'm not going to toot my own horn, but yes, me too. And I was surveyed back in 2007 4 times, banking records and things like that, because they consider me to be a threat to their concept of government. Their concept of government is the rich and powerful in Washington, D.C. They get to decide everything for us. They get to stuff money into their pockets. They get to carry on. They get to create a second state, which was not envisioned by our founding fathers, the establishment state. That's what we can call it. Highly corrupt, highly non-responsive to the American people. So that's Montgomery. So I tried to remind Judge Leon in more diplomatic terms, and I'm talking to you right now, that we needed to move this case forward because it was related to the other 2 cases. And I was a plaintiff in the other cases too, because as a lawyer, I can't communicate with any of my clients in confidence. My attorney-client privilege, their privilege that belongs to them, is breached. And consequently, that puts me right in the line of fire of the illegal, unconstitutional violations that continue to occur. I also explained to Leon that while he did issue 2 preliminary injunctions, they were later vacated by the circuit court, the appeals court, because they claimed, well, we have a new law, the USA Freedom Act, so that actually prevents the illegal surveillance. But we know just in the last month, with the disclosures of Circa News, John Solomon, Sarah Carter, and others who came forward with information that, in fact, these intelligence agencies continue to violate not just the statutory law, the USA Freedom Act, or the Patriot Act, Section 215. The USA Freedom Act deals with mass communication domestically, but the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, Section 702, that deals with calls overseas. That's what we know about this unmasking and everything of communications with foreign entities. In any event, to make it simple, the intelligence agencies are surveilling everyone, and it continues, and it's in violation to the law of the case that was established by Judge Richard Leon, which this amounts to a Fourth Amendment violation, unreasonable searches and seizures that our founding fathers put into effect because King George was busting into their houses, raping their women, taking their property, violating the sanctity of their home and their colonies, and that's why we have the Fourth Amendment. And Leon, in the previous cases, had ruled that this was almost Orwellian. That means George Orwell's 1984, a police state, a big brother, where the government is literally into your underwear. They know everything that's going on, and they can take action if they don't like what you're doing. They can destroy you, your loved ones, as they're trying to destroy President Trump right now, this Obama deep state. So this is what I explained to him. And, of course, the government lawyer, while conceding that it was a related case, mockingly says, well, Mr. Klayman's in front of this court again. His name's James Gilligan. I call him Gilligan's Island because he lives on an island by himself. He's someone who's not necessarily a bad person, but he's a yes man, like most of the people in the Justice Department today. Newt Gingrich, just a few weeks ago, pointed out that 97% of the lawyers at the Justice Department either voted for or contributed monies to Hillary Clinton's Senate campaign. The Justice Department is not controlled by President Trump. There is a deep state there. And in fact, Jeff Sessions, we're going to talk about that, the Attorney General, is not even in control of his own department. And that's not unusual, frankly, but that's the problem that we have. And that's why this is so unique. So anyway, I was up against the Justice Department. It's been a little bit like Perry Mason. I've been up against him for over 20 years. And although we respect each other, I don't respect the fact that he's a yes man and the rest of them over at the Justice Department in the Federal Programs Branch, who, by the way, have been sanctioned by a federal judge last year in the amnesty case for lying to the court. I don't respect the fact that they try to obstruct what's going on because they are the Department of Justice. And in fact, they work for President Trump, in effect. And why are they giving any kind of resistance to the fact that Trump has been surveilled? And we know from Montgomery that he has. So anyway, I made these arguments to Judge Leon, and the following Tuesday, he said he would do it Monday, but it was early Tuesday morning, he decided he was going to proceed with the case. And he said in an abbreviated hearing schedule, the case is going to move very quickly. We're going to be moving for discovery to take the deposition of James Comey, to take the deposition of James Clapper, who was the director of national intelligence. He's a defendant. John Brennan, the very corrupt former CIA director under Obama and the agencies. This is perhaps the most important case in American history, because if we don't get justice here, we all live under this sword of Damocles. We live under this Orwellian state. We can't move. We can't talk. We can't do anything without the government knowing what it is we're doing. And this government, frankly, I'll be blunt, is evil. It's evil to the core. And they don't even want President Trump to succeed. And he's the president of the United States. It's an alternative government. It's out of control. And we're going to talk about in the next segment a complaint that was filed by 34 Democrats against the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, to try to neuter him, the great Republican elephant. And the Attorney General really has been prevented from doing his job. And he's getting rather reflexive these days. He's not the same person as was nominated for this post. And I think he's a good man. I think he's an honest man. But frankly, right now, he's out to protect his own turf because they're trying to destroy him. And that creates an issue here. That means that Freedom Watch is even more important. We need you to donate to our cause. We are your private Justice Department. You can't depend on the Justice Department. I was an alumnus. I left because I found it to be the Department of Injustice. So go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. Please contribute because we are your last line of defense. We're trying to stave off a violent revolution, and we see that, in fact, we seem to be headed in that direction after we saw what happened in Alexandria a few weeks ago with congressmen being shot up. Our last hope is to take action ourselves, legal action, and we need your support, and we need your prayers, and we need your contributions. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, contribute to our cause, become a member, get our newsletters, get our YouTubes. We want you to be a citizen soldier. I want to thank you for listening every week because we have new information. We don't regurgitate. We make the news. This is Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We'll be right back.
Fearless.
This Klayman, he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
You don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I'm going to talk now about Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and I'm going to be blunt. I kept this under wraps for quite a long time. They've been trying to destroy Jeff Sessions. They claimed that he had undisclosed meetings with a Russian ambassador. I mean, big deal. So what? He had a meeting with the Russian ambassador. He did it while he was senator. He didn't do anything behind anybody's back. He was entitled to do it. And now 34 Democrats have come forward and asked for an inspector general's investigation, claiming that he had a conflict of interest when James Comey was fired because he recused himself from that investigation. Well, number one, he should have never recused himself. We live in a different time. And that's why President Trump is the president for this time. I loved Ronald Reagan, and I loved his class. But frankly, the people in Washington today have no class, and you have to deal with them the way they deal with you. So Sessions has to get tough here, and he has to be able to do what needs to be done. And I've asked him to review the investigation of Cliven Bundy, because that was a political prosecution, and it continues to be. You know why Cliven Bundy has been prosecuted? It's because he used the word Negro, the same word that was used by Martin Luther King to describe his race. And there's nothing wrong with that. I remember during those years, I was a young boy, and if you said that someone was black, they would take offense to it. And later, African Americans, through Jesse Jackson, coined that term, African American. Well, Cliven waged a successful, peaceful standoff at Bunkerville. That's where his ranch is. Harry Reid and the government wanted to take his land away and sell it to the Chinese. They busted into his property. They beat up his daughter, his sister rather. They tased his two sons, killed his cattle. They did everything they could to try to run Cliven off the land. And when people around the United States saw what was happening, that this overreaching government, this vicious government, was coming in to destroy a family, they came to his aid. And they exercised their Second Amendment rights to be free, the same Second Amendment rights that the founders to our Constitution put in, along with the Fourth Amendment that we talked to in the first segment here. And they peacefully stood down the government. But what happened after that? Cliven, who doesn't know politically correct words, he's now in prison in Pahrump, Nevada. He's been there for over a year and a half because he's got a judge that frankly hates him and is a handpicked appointee of Harry Reid, former corrupt senator from Las Vegas, and also President Obama. But he compared his plight to the New York Times to the Negro in the Old South. He thought that was the right word. He even looked it up in Webster's dictionary. And Obama took offense to that. And at a White House Correspondents' Dinner, you can see the video on our website at ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org, ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. Please go there and contribute to Cliven's cause. Obama said at a White House Correspondents' Dinner, "Let me give you some advice." He was talking to Cliven. He's trying to be funny. "Don't start your sentence off, 'Tell me about the Negro,' because there will be repercussions." I'm paraphrasing right now. And sure enough, 2 years later, Obama and his corrupt Attorney General Loretta Lynch indicted Cliven, his sons, and tens of other defendants. And they're going to trial, and they need your help. This week, they pled out someone that they're trying with Cliven, an individual by the name of Ryan Payne, who feared that he was going to have to do life. And they're going to try to use this against Cliven because he's a defendant in the same case that's going to be tried in about a month and a half against Cliven. And they're going to be able to ask him on the stand, have you been convicted of something? Well, Ryan Payne didn't do anything wrong either, but he faced life imprisonment, so he had to throw the towel in. And in fact, the prosecution has lots of problems. It's really had a hard time proving any guilt here because the American people are smart. There was 2 prior trials, but Cliven hasn't been tried yet. He's still in prison. So what's my point? Is that I went to Attorney General Jeff Sessions. I said, you've got to be able to do an evaluation of this case. I didn't tell him what to do, but just this week I was told that he can't meet with us, that, in fact, if I want to deal with anybody, I have to deal with the U.S. attorney in Nevada. Well, that U.S. attorney is the hand-picked attorney of the Democrats. He's trying to destroy Cliven Bundy, just like the rest of the Justice Department is trying to destroy Jeff Sessions. So I call upon Jeff, a very sincere, honest guy, down to earth, a good guy. He's from the South. But, if you're from the South, hey, I went to Duke University. I went to Emory Law School. There's a prejudice against people in the South. They think that we're all racist. Well, we're not racist. The South is more open. It's less racist than the North. But that's what you come up against. So, Jeff, I'm saying to you, if you're listening to this show, please evaluate Cliven's case because this is an injustice. It's a political prosecution. It's something that we can't allow to continue in a civilized society. We, in the United States, are very much dependent upon the American people to rise up. So go to ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org, ClivenBundyDefenseFund.org. Contribute to our cause. We'll be right back.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
To support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We're going to talk now about the leftist media. Freedom Watch has a strike force called the Leftist Media Strike Force. You can find that at freedomwatchusa.org. Because President Trump and others are right, they are the opposition. They are an evil force in the country today, along with the deep state, the Obama-Clinton deep state that still remains in government and is not going to go away. It's kind of like herpes, Once you get it, it doesn't go away. It's forever. It's not like true love. But this leftist media is out to destroy President Trump and everybody around him. It really doesn't matter what it is. And I'm bringing on the phone right now is Franklin Rath, an extremely talented radio talk show host, a former producer at Radio America for G. Gordon Liddy, someone who's a great talent in his own right. Franklin, you're there, right? You're down
herpes.
there
Herpes.
in Mexico.
It's like herpes. It never goes away. It's not like true love. Larry Klayman, it's an honor to be on with you, and thanks for your kind somewhat obsequious introductions. You bet. You know what I was thinking about this morning? I don't know if you remember the movie Blow Up. It's an old movie. I guess it was the late 60s. It was the last of the Italian neo-realistic movies by Michelangelo Antonioni, which is a great name for anybody to have, even if he's a converted Jewish kid like you. And it was all about how it was about a photographer who tries to solve a murder mystery, and they are blowing up the picture, right, to try to solve the mystery. But it's all about the distortion of the late 60s. And in the end, the movie kind of is brilliant, but it means nothing, or it's a reflection on a society that has really lost control. And when you talk about the leftist media, it's worse than an implosion. It's kind of like they just exploded in meaninglessness. You talk about Sessions and everything you've been talking about on the show so far. That was what my thought this morning as I was looking forward to being with you, is that movie Blow Up, which is all about distortion, inaccuracy, and the loss of meaning.
Well, let's talk about what MSNBC's been doing, CNN. They actually have actual communists as their commentators. It's unbelievable. Van Jones is an admitted communist. He's quite proud of it.
Right.
Comes on nightly. He's an anchor. And he's not even the worst of it over there, frankly. And then you've got MSNBC with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. She's the daughter of Zygmunt Brzezinski, who basically sold out Iran to the Ayatollah, great heritage there. And then you've got the other networks. You got just MSNBC generally. And, of course, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the L.A. Times. You can go on and on and on. And they're just foaming at the mouth like rabid dogs, trying to destroy the Trump presidency, trying to destroy anybody who's supportive of him. In my view, it's spilled over into society. You know, I see it on a daily basis. I have meetings with people in Washington and elsewhere, and they know that I'm a strong Trump supporter. I have criticized the president. I'm nonpartisan. You know, this last lawsuit I brought, we sued his CIA director, Mike Pompeo, and we sued Admiral Mike Rogers, who's running the NSA. These are part of the administration. I believe they've broken away from the president. They're not following his edicts and instructions. They're part of this Washington establishment. But I sense when I meet with people that they just look at you with dagger eyes because you support the president. And it's really frightening, Franklin. Are you getting the same reaction from people?
Yeah, first of all, what I love about what you've represented from the beginning, if you don't mind my blowing your horn for a minute, because you always blow your own, is the fact that, Larry, everybody's afraid of you because it's more than nonpartisan. We all know that Washington is a place where the president comes in and the lawyers leave the law firms and walk over to the White House. And then when the next administration come in, the White House guys go back to Patton Boggs or whomever it is at that particular time. You really represent an American founding ideal of a watchdog on government, not in this case the press, but in your capacity as an attorney. And that's why they look at you with those dagger eyes. You're the only person the sharks are afraid of.
Well, that's true, Franklin. But the other reason is that, and I got this many years ago, is that they assume that if you're a conservative, that you're anti-woman, that you're anti-African-American, that you're anti-homosexual, that you're anti-everything that the left believes in, you see, and we're all human beings, and we're not anti those things. We just don't believe that people should have more rights than others. And in fact, those groups have fought for equal rights, and that's a commendable thing. But now, if you're in the so-called majority, and frankly, Anglo-Americans are slightly in the majority, but really the way the law works, we're not in the majority anymore, is that they think you're anti-them, and they equate that with Trump. And Trump's been, plastered with this veneer of being a racist. I mean, the guy hasn't said one racist thing since he's been in office. If he makes a comment about Mika Brzezinski, the soon-to-be bride of Joe Scarborough, who I guess he was influenced by her, and all of a sudden, having been a so-called conservative, now he's a leftist. And if Trump makes one comment, pushing back after he gets beaten up for 3 hours every day by these people, all of a sudden he becomes anti-woman, etc. And they assume that we're the same way too, that all conservatives are that way. And that's what I'm talking about.
The brilliant move you mentioned earlier. You were talking about specific attacks on people. We know that George Soros, for instance, our pals over at WND and even at here at Radio America. Soros, if you Google search, there's money going in to people like Terry Kreppel that give him the first page. He posts a blog 4 years ago. He says, Larry Klayman, he's some nut-wing right-winger. And for some reason, of all your accomplishments, right? I mean, Larry, of all the things you've done, breaking up telco and all these huge things, that guy's news is front page news on Google, which gets to Google. But at the same time, what you are getting at, I think, is that they've done something that even Hitler couldn't do. Hitler, Stalin, they all said, oh, the Jews are political enemies, whomever they were at the time, right? We're just bad for society. That's all Hitler really got away with. Hitler didn't say the Jews were hateful, nasty, racist, misogynistic. You certainly can't call Jews non-matriarchal, right? But the left today has managed to do it, and they're doing it everywhere. America's future is on college campuses right now, and they really believe that Republicans are evil.
Well, that's right, and we have to push back, and that's why we have this leftist media strike force, and you can see it at freedomwatchusa.org. Sign up for our newsletters, our YouTubes. I do YouTubes most every day that I'm in one place, or I'm on TV elsewhere, and I send that out. But we have to counter with that. That's why this radio show is so important. It's not just giving new information to the American people and to our supporters, but it's pushing back because it's an educational process. You know, Freedom Watch is an educational organization primarily. We're not a law firm, even though I'm a lawyer and we bring legal cases. That's obviously quite appropriate as we're set up. But we're to educate the American people, and that's so important today. And talk radio, of which you've been a major part, Franklin, has done a great job. We have some new networks out there. I mean, in addition to Fox, you've got Newsmax, you've got I-24, you've got One America, and we're growing and we're catching on because the American people are getting smart. And the more that these vicious leftists like Rachel Maddow and MSNBC, like Jake Tapper and others on CNN. Unfortunately, Jake has kind of gone over to the other side. He used to be a reasonable person, but Jeff Zucker, who runs CNN, makes them toe the line or they won't have jobs. And Zucker absolutely hates Trump. He's an ultra-leftist, and it's frightening. And the Washington Post...
Tapper's so talented. He's a great guy, and I know his parents, by the way. He's just a fascinating... We are witnessing, by the way, Larry, would you say, and I have another question for you, but would you say we're witnessing the end of journalism? The reason I ask is I'm always seeing stories, and I'm a layman. I'm not a journalist. I don't know if I believe in journalism. You know, my dad used to read the Washington Times and the Washington Post every morning, and he would, my wonderful 2 PhD dad, he would read these papers, and he sort of ingrained in me the fact that there was no real journalism. But at least stories were sourced. Are you seeing to some extent, especially with Russia, talking about blow-up and distortion? I mean, this Russia obsession, right? Are you seeing to some extent the end of the sourced story?
Oh, absolutely. But let me tell you what's even worse. And I talked about Dennis Montgomery and him coming forward to James Comey burying that investigation. I brought a lawsuit against Comey for obstruction of justice and also these agencies for continued mass illegal unconstitutional surveillance. But, you know, these intelligence agencies tried to destroy Montgomery. They planted false stories with the New York Times with James Risen, who at one time was thought to be the premier national security reporter, along with his partner, guess who, Eric Lichtblau, who this week had to resign from CNN for making up a phony story about Russia and some other CNN reporters. Lichtblau's the one who fed the information to Risen. And Dennis Montgomery winds up getting destroyed. He's called a hoax, the biggest hoax in American history. And we have sued Risen, and we're in court. It's on appeal right now. We got a very leftist judge up front. But we're confident that we have a very good chance of winning. And that's what we're doing at Leftist Media Strike Force. And we're doing it, and we're going against the media. We're holding them accountable. And I was very glad to see that Sarah Palin sued the New York Times this week for being implicated in the death of Gabby Giffords, the congressman from Arizona. It's time that these people get their own medicine. It's time that they be sued. It's time that they be brought to court. Whether you win or not, that doesn't really matter in many ways. Put them through the paces. When you have all these leftist judges on the court, 70 to 80% Clinton-Obama appointees, the odds are not great, because these judges will try to throw the cases out before they go to trial, illegally, I might add. Right. We have a runaway judiciary. But we've got to hold these people accountable, because they are crooked, they're dishonest, they're destroying the country, and they're perverting the minds of the youth in this country. And like you said, George Soros
Larry,
is behind it.
Real fast, because I know you're the guy who knows everything, and I don't know how much you can say on the air. But there was an FBI special agent who was indicted a few days ago, I guess, for lying about his involvement in the shooting in Oregon. And patriotic Americans always think about Ruby Ridge and Waco, and this agent involved in the arrest of Lavoy Finicum has now been charged. Can I ask you what the latest is on this? Because everybody wants to know.
Well, and I talked about that earlier in the show, Franklin, before you came on, the Bundy prosecution, and it really is a political prosecution. I don't know if you ever read the book The Stranger by Albert Camus,
of course,
where an Algerian was indicted and convicted of murder because he didn't cry at his mother's funeral. Okay, I mean, that's what we're dealing with Bundy. Bundy happened to equate his plight and his family to that of the Negro in the Old South. Obama took offense. He had his Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, indict him and others. And yet he didn't harm a hair on anybody's head, neither did anybody around him. But an FBI agent shot this guy out in Oregon in cold blood and then lied about it under oath. And this tells you about our government today. It is broken away from the people. We're back to 1776, and even worse, because they have many more powers than King George III had. They have the intelligence agencies and other powers to destroy you. And yes, I'm glad you raised that, because it shows you that Jeff Sessions needs to step in and evaluate this Bundy prosecution. I haven't told him how to do it, but someone's got to look at it, because these are Obama appointees out in Las Vegas, the U.S. attorney. They're corrupt. They want to hang Bundy and everybody around him. And frankly, this is payback. It's payback for Obama's feelings of persecution and Loretta Lynch's feelings of persecution. And Jeff Sessions knows about that, because he's no racist. But he's been called a racist over and over again, simply because he's from the South. And I take offense. So go to Cliven Bundy Defense Fund. .org, Cliven Bundy Defense Fund.org. Please contribute. We're going to be going on into a very long trial. I may not be in it. I'm still trying to get in. The judge has kept me out. But we've got others that we're trying to bring in, such as Congressman Bob Barr. We'll see if he gets retained to do that. But we need your help, and we need it fast. And we thank you, and Godspeed. We'll be right back.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
We call this part the verdict. And the verdict is that we, the American people, we need to hang together, or as Ben Franklin, our great founding father from my native city of Philadelphia, used to say, we'll all hang separately. We clearly will, in this world of the deep state, in this world of Obama and Clinton still controlling that deep state. These people could care less about the American people. They want to destroy the American people. But we have to talk seriously now, because we've got this lawsuit, and I talked about it at the outset of this show. The lawsuit that I filed with Dennis Montgomery against James Comey, against the FBI, against the NSA, against the CIA, against the Director of National Intelligence. It is the most important lawsuit out there today, because it gets to your freedoms. It gets to our Fourth Amendment rights to be secure in our home. And we basically need to understand that the world is different today than it was a long time ago. I told you about James Risen, who was sent to destroy Montgomery, to claim that he committed the biggest hoax in American history, that he almost got George W. Bush to shoot down civilian airliners in the holiday period of 2003. Dennis had actually come up with a software that the intelligence agencies thought was extremely important. It allowed you to disencrypt the subliminal messages of bin Laden that were being played by video on Al Jazeera. And he was the franchise. And at least Risen recognized that. But who was behind that? Doing research with Risen was Eric Lichtblau, his partner at the New York Times. And now we know that Lichtblau is a certified liar. He's lost his job. And Risen is equally a certified liar. But we wound up with a very liberal judge, a leftist judge, who initially dismissed Dennis's case. We're up on appeal. We're hopeful that it'll be reversed. But we need your strong support. And we're up against tremendous forces here. So please go to freedomwatchusa.org, donate handsomely to our cause, because this affects all of us. When this is hanging over our head, this kind of power, this kind of ability to destroy. You know, you all use Uber or whatever service. Uber knows where you are at every moment. Well, the government knows even more where you are. The government can turn on your smart TVs and watch you and listen to you. The government gets into your phones. The government can do whatever it wants, and more information is coming out each day. You can see that. I posted at freedomwatchusa.org. We need to take matters into our own hands, just like the colonialists did in 1776 in signing the Declaration of Independence and declaring a new nation. We need a new nation, not with these people in Washington, D.C. And look what's happening. The Republicans are just as happy to destroy the Trump presidency that's trying to break up this evil establishment as the Democrats. It's not just the intelligence state. And we know the intelligence state has been into Cliven Bundy as well, him and his family, and you're going to be hearing more about that. But we have to basically push forward with whatever we can legally and peacefully to bring about a new country. And we need to restore a sense of equality in this country, that nobody is above the law, that nobody, no matter what your race, color, religion, or creed, is better than anybody else. And we now have a mentality in this country where if you were a persecuted minority in the past, you deserve special rights. You can get away with all kinds of crimes, whether it's Black Lives Matter or the new Black Panthers, or there was a march with lesbians recently where someone showed up, a woman who wanted to play a role with a Jewish star, and she was excluded. She's called a racist because she's Jewish, because the left basically supports the Palestinians over the Jews and the Christians in the Middle East. We're out of control. So we've got to push back, and we cannot be afraid. And the moral to the story is, look, I'm a registered Republican, and I'm independent. I ran for the Senate in 2003, 2004 in Florida. I called myself a true Republican like Thomas Jefferson was. But this Republican Party is bankrupt, and President Trump is trying to establish a new Republican Party that represents the people, not the fat cats in Washington that, frankly, are there for the money and there for the power. And that is why joining Freedom Watch is so important. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, sign up. You'll get our newsletters, you'll get our emails, you'll get our YouTubes, and you can become what is in effect a member of this new revolution. So I want to thank you for listening today. As I said, every day that we're on the air, we present new information. We don't regurgitate the news. We make the news. God bless you. God bless America. God save America. We'll be back next week.